Captain Minho Park stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel Harmony and watched the massive alien space station grow larger on the main screen. The station looked like a giant metal beast with sharp spikes pointing in all directions. It was 3 times bigger than any human-built structure in space, and it made the Harmony look like a small toy in comparison. "First contact protocol is ready, Captain," said Lieutenant Yuna Kim from her position at the tactical station. Her voice was calm, but Minho could hear the excitement underneath. This was what they had all trained for during the long journey from Earth. After 200 years of searching the galaxy, humans had finally found another intelligent species. "All systems are running perfectly," reported Engineer Jiwon Lee from her control panel. She had been working non-stop for 3 days to make sure everything would work properly during this historic meeting. The translation systems were online, and the diplomatic gifts were ready in the cargo bay. Dr. Hana Cho looked up from her medical scanner readings and nodded to the captain. "The alien biology scans show they are reptilian-based life forms. They appear to be much larger than humans with enhanced muscle density and reinforced bone structures. Their body temperature runs higher than ours, and their heart rate is elevated, which could indicate either excitement or aggression." The communication system crackled to life and a harsh voice filled the bridge. The universal translator worked quickly to convert the alien words into human speech. "Human vessel, you will dock at port 7 and follow all instructions exactly. Any deviation from our commands will result in immediate destruction. You will bring only 4 representatives and no weapons of any kind. You have 10 minutes to comply." Minho exchanged glances with his crew. The aliens did not sound very friendly, but this was expected. Most species probably developed careful protocols when meeting unknown aliens. "Acknowledged alien station. We are proceeding to dock at port 7 now. We appreciate this opportunity for peaceful contact between our species." The docking procedure went smoothly, and soon the 4 human representatives were walking through the alien corridors. The walls were made of dark metal, and everything was built on a much larger scale than human ships. The ceiling was twice as high as needed for humans, and the doorways were wide enough for 3 people to walk through at once. 2 alien guards escorted them through the station. The aliens were indeed much larger than humans, standing nearly 8 feet tall with thick reptilian skin that looked like natural armor. Their eyes were bright yellow and their mouths were filled with sharp teeth. They moved with the confident stride of natural predators who had never needed to fear anything in their lives. The diplomatic meeting room was enormous, with a long table made from what looked like polished black stone. Strange symbols were carved into the walls, and the lighting cast dramatic shadows everywhere. At the far end of the table sat 3 more aliens wearing elaborate metal decorations that probably indicated high rank. The largest alien stood up as the humans entered. His skin was darker than the others, and covered with old scars that told stories of many battles. Metal rings pierced his ears and nose, and his claws had been sharpened to deadly points. When he spoke, his voice was deep and commanding. "I am War, Chief Gorthak the Render," he announced. "I lead the Vorthak Empire in this region of space. You small creatures will now learn your place in the natural order of things." Dr. Hana Cho stepped forward with her scanner and began taking readings. "Fascinating," she said quietly. "The bone density is even higher than our initial scans indicated, and those muscle fibers are incredibly efficient. The scar tissue suggests rapid healing abilities, and the claw structure is clearly designed for both climbing and combat." Gorthak looked confused by her reaction. "You examine me like I am some laboratory specimen," he said with growing irritation. "Do you not understand what stands before you?" "We understand you are the leader of your people," said Captain Minho with diplomatic politeness. "We are honored to meet you and hope this can be the beginning of peaceful relations between our species." The other Vorthak leaders made sounds that might have been laughter. One of them spoke up. "Your captain thinks we want peace. How amusing. Small creatures always think they can negotiate when they should be cowering in fear." Gorthak raised himself to his full height, and his chest expanded like a balloon. His mouth opened wide, showing rows of razor-sharp teeth, and a sound came from deep in his throat. It started as a low rumble that seemed to shake the floor itself and then grew into a terrifying roar that filled the entire room. The sound was designed by millions of years of evolution to trigger the deepest fears of any creature that heard it. All four humans turned to look at the source of the sound with mild curiosity. Lieutenant Yuna Kim tilted her head slightly to one side like someone trying to understand a foreign language. Her expression was polite and interested but showed no trace of fear or submission. "Do you want to try that again?" she asked in the same tone someone might use to ask about the weather. "I think there might have been a translation error." The roaring stopped immediately. Gorthik stood frozen with his mouth still open and his eyes wide with shock. In his entire life, no creature had ever failed to show proper fear when he performed the dominance display. Even other Vorthak warriors would lower their eyes and step back when faced with such a demonstration of power. The other Vorthak leaders looked equally stunned. One of them leaned forward and spoke in their own language. Gorthak responded in harsh whispers, and they began what sounded like an urgent conference. Engineer Jiwon Lee was studying the architecture of the room with professional interest. "The acoustic design is quite clever," she said to Dr. Hanacho. "The curved walls and ceiling height amplify sound in specific ways. That roaring display would probably be much more effective in their natural environment." "Yes, the throat structure. Modifications are remarkable," Dr. Hanacho agreed. "They have developed specialized vocal cords and resonating chambers. It is clearly an evolutionary adaptation for intimidation and territorial displays." Captain Minho waited patiently while the aliens continued their whispered discussion. He had expected some cultural misunderstandings during first contact, and this seemed to be a relatively minor one. Perhaps the roaring was some kind of formal greeting that the translation computers had not properly explained. Finally, Gorthak turned back to face the humans. His expression was confused and somewhat suspicious. "You creatures show no fear. This is not natural. All intelligent species recognize superior predators and respond appropriately. What manner of beings are you?" Lieutenant Yuna Kim smiled politely. "We are humans from the planet Earth. We evolved as persistence hunters and cooperative social animals. Our species survived and thrived through teamwork, problem-solving, and adaptation, rather than intimidation displays." "Impossible," said one of the other Vorthak leaders. "Weak creatures cannot develop space travel or advanced technology. Only apex predators have the strength and intelligence necessary for such achievements." Dr. Hana Cho looked up from her scanner with interest. "Actually, that is a common misconception. Intelligence often develops as an alternative to physical dominance. Species that must cooperate to survive tend to develop better problem-solving abilities and more advanced social structures." Gorthak was becoming more agitated. "You speak as if you are equals to the mighty Vorthak Empire. This cannot be tolerated. You will show proper respect or face the consequences." Captain Minho maintained his diplomatic composure. "We certainly respect your achievements and would welcome the opportunity to learn about your culture. Perhaps we could discuss areas of mutual benefit and cooperation." The war chief made another sound of disbelief. "Cooperation is for prey animals. Predators take what they need and destroy anything that opposes them. This is the way of the universe." Engineer Jiwon Lee had been quietly observing the aliens' technology and equipment. "Their metallurgy is quite advanced," she said to the others. "The alloys used in their decorative items show sophisticated manufacturing techniques. I would love to learn more about their industrial processes." This casual interest in their technology rather than fear of their weapons seemed to disturb the Vorthak even more. They had built their entire civilization on the principle that superior strength commanded automatic respect and submission. These strange small creatures seemed completely immune to intimidation and genuinely curious about everything around them. The meeting continued for another hour but made little progress. The humans remained polite and interested while the Vorthak grew increasingly frustrated by their failure to establish dominance. Finally, Gorthak declared that the humans would remain on the station as guests, while the Vorthak leadership decided how to handle this unprecedented situation. As they were escorted to their temporary quarters, Lieutenant Yuna Kim looked back at the confused aliens and wondered what would happen next. She had a feeling this was just the beginning of a very interesting cultural exchange. The guest quarters on the Vorthak station were clearly designed for intimidation rather than comfort. The walls were made of the same dark metal as the rest of the station and decorated with what appeared to be weapons from various conquered species. The furniture was oversized and angular with sharp edges that could easily cut unwary visitors. Even the lighting was harsh and cast threatening shadows in every corner. Dr. Hana Cho found the display fascinating from an anthropological perspective. "Look at these artifacts," she said to her companions while examining a curved blade mounted on the wall. Each one tells a story about a different species they have encountered. The craftsmanship varies significantly, which suggests they come from many different technological levels. Engineer Jiwon Lee was more interested in the room's technical systems. "The environmental controls are quite sophisticated," she observed while studying a control panel. "They can adjust temperature, humidity, and atmospheric composition for different species. This suggests they have hosted many different types of aliens before." Captain Minho sat at the oversized table and reviewed his notes from the meeting. "The Vorthak clearly expect all species to submit immediately upon meeting them. Our failure to show fear has created a significant problem for their worldview." Lieutenant Yuna Kim was doing stretching exercises in the corner of the room. The long journey through space had left all of them somewhat out of shape, and she wanted to maintain her physical readiness. "I think they are more confused than angry," she said between stretches. "They genuinely do not understand how any intelligent species could fail to recognize their supposed superiority." A chime sounded, and the door opened to admit 3 Vorthak guards. The leader was a female, slightly smaller than Gorthak, but still impressive by human standards. Her scales had a different pattern, and her decorative metal work was more elaborate. "I am Sub-Commander Vorthak the Sharp," she announced. "The War Chief has decided that you creatures must prove your worthiness before further negotiations can proceed. You will face trials to demonstrate whether you possess any useful abilities." Dr. Hana Cho looked up with interest. "What sort of trials? Are they based on your traditional customs, or designed specifically for our species?" The sub-commander seemed surprised by the question. Most species begged for mercy when informed about the trials. They are standard tests used to evaluate all potential subjects of the Empire. Physical combat endurance challenges and psychological examinations. "That sounds quite reasonable," said Captain Minho. "We would be happy to participate in your traditional evaluation process. It will give us valuable insights into Vorthak culture." Vorthak the Sharp stared at him for a moment. "You agree to face the trials willingly. This is most unusual. Do you not understand that failure could result in your death?" Engineer Jiwon Lee looked up from the control panel she had been studying. "Everything involves some level of risk," she said matter-of-factly. "We knew there would be challenges when we decided to make first contact with an unknown species. These trials are probably less dangerous than the journey through space to get here." The sub-commander made a gesture to her guards, and they escorted the humans through more corridors to what appeared to be a training facility. The room was enormous, with high ceilings and multiple levels connected by ramps and platforms. Various pieces of equipment were scattered around, including weights that looked too heavy for any human to lift, and obstacle courses designed for much larger beings. "The first trial is combat," announced Vorthak the Sharp. "Each of you will face one of our warriors in single combat. The rules are simple. Fight until one participant can no longer continue." A massive Vorthak warrior stepped forward. His skin was covered with ritual scars, and his muscles looked like they had been carved from stone. He carried no weapons, but his claws and teeth were clearly deadly enough on their own. He roared at the humans in the same intimidating manner that Gorthak had used during the first meeting. Lieutenant Yuna Kim stepped forward without hesitation. "I will go first," she said calmly. "Are there any specific rules about techniques or equipment?" The sub-commander looked confused again. "You volunteer for single combat against a Vorthak warrior. Are you certain you understand what this means?" "I understand that this is important to your culture," Yuna replied. "I also understand that you want to evaluate our capabilities. This seems like the most efficient way to accomplish both objectives." The combat area was a circular platform surrounded by observation areas where other Vorthak had gathered to watch. The warrior across from Yuna was nearly twice her height and probably 4 times her weight. His reach advantage was enormous, and his natural weapons were clearly superior to anything humans possessed. When the sub-commander signaled the start of combat, the Vorthak warrior charged forward with impressive speed for such a large creature. His strategy was obviously to end the fight quickly with overwhelming force. Most opponents would either flee in terror or be crushed by the initial assault. Yuna simply stepped to the side at the last possible moment and allowed the warrior's momentum to carry him past her. She moved with fluid grace that made the dodge look effortless. As he stumbled past, she tapped him lightly on the shoulder and said, "Thank you for the demonstration of Vorthak combat techniques." The warrior spun around with a confused expression. In his experience, prey animals either cowered in terror or fought desperately for their lives. This small creature seemed to be treating the life-or-death combat as some kind of educational experience. He charged again with more careful timing, but Yuna was no longer where he expected her to be. She seemed to flow around his attacks like water moving around rocks. Each time he reached for her, she was just beyond his grasp. She was not running away or showing any signs of fear. Instead, she appeared to be studying his movements with the same scientific curiosity that Dr. Hana Cho had shown earlier. "Your muscle fiber recruitment patterns are quite interesting," she said while avoiding another swipe of his claws. "The power generation is impressive, but the recovery time between maximum efforts creates predictable windows of opportunity." The watching Vorthak began to murmur among themselves. They had never seen anything like this before. The human was not fighting back, but she was also not being defeated. She seemed completely untouchable while maintaining a running commentary on the warrior's biomechanics. After several more minutes of fruitless attacks, the warrior began to show signs of exhaustion. His breathing became labored, and his movements lost their initial speed and precision. Yuna continued to dance around him with apparent ease while making observations about Vorthak physiology. The anaerobic energy systems are highly developed for short bursts of activity, she noted, but the cardiovascular efficiency appears optimized for brief encounters rather than extended pursuit. This makes perfect sense for ambush predators. Finally, the exhausted warrior collapsed to his knees, breathing heavily. He had never experienced such complete frustration in combat. The small human had made him look foolish without even attempting to harm him. Yuna immediately approached and offered him water from her supply pack. "That was an excellent demonstration," she said sincerely. "Your species has clearly developed very effective combat adaptations. I learned a great deal from observing your techniques." The warrior stared at her in amazement. He had just been defeated in single combat, but instead of gloating over her victory, the human was thanking him for the educational opportunity and offering medical assistance. Sub-Commander Vorthak the Sharp looked around at her fellow officers. None of them knew how to interpret what they had just witnessed. According to their traditional understanding, the human should have been torn apart within seconds. Instead, their champion warrior had been systematically exhausted by an opponent who treated the life-or-death struggle as a learning experience. "The next trial will test endurance," she announced while trying to regain her composure. "You will be required to survive in our environmental challenge chambers for 24 hours without food or water." Dr. Hana Cho stepped forward eagerly. "Will we be allowed to take measurements and samples during the test?" she asked. This would be a wonderful opportunity to study Vorthak environmental adaptation techniques. The sub-commander realized that these strange creatures were going to treat every challenge as some kind of scientific expedition. Their complete lack of fear was beginning to unnerve even the most experienced Vorthak warriors. She led them to the environmental chambers, which were designed to simulate the harshest conditions on various Vorthak worlds. The temperature could range from freezing to scorching, and the atmosphere could be adjusted to include toxic gases or extreme pressure variations. Engineer Jiwan Lee examined the chamber controls with professional interest. "The engineering is quite sophisticated," she said admiringly. "The heat exchange systems and atmospheric processors are more efficient than anything we have developed. I would love to study the technical specifications." As they prepared to enter the chambers, Captain Minho reflected on how completely the humans had misunderstood Vorthak expectations. What the aliens intended as terrifying ordeals, the humans were treating as fascinating research opportunities. He suspected this cultural disconnect was about to become even more pronounced. The environmental challenge chambers had been designed to break the spirit of any creature unfortunate enough to be placed inside them. The temperature fluctuated wildly from scorching heat that could melt metal to freezing cold that turned breath into ice crystals. The atmosphere shifted between toxic gases that burned the lungs and thin air that left victims gasping for oxygen. The chamber walls displayed holographic images of natural disasters and predatory beasts to create psychological pressure. Dr. Hana Cho emerged from her 24-hour ordeal with detailed notes about atmospheric composition and temperature variance patterns. "The environmental simulation technology is remarkable," she said to Sub-Commander Vorthak the Sharp. "The precision with which they can control atmospheric chemistry suggests advanced nanotechnology applications." Engineer Jiwan Lee had actually fallen asleep during the final hours of her test, despite the chamber's attempts to disorient her with flashing lights and discordant sounds. "The power management systems are incredibly efficient," she reported. "They maintain precise environmental controls while consuming minimal energy. I would love to examine the fusion reactors that must be powering this facility." Captain Minho had spent his time in the chamber analyzing the psychological warfare techniques being employed against him. "The combination of physical stressors and mental pressure is quite sophisticated," he observed. "Your species has clearly studied the fear responses of many different types of aliens." Lieutenant Yuna Kim looked completely refreshed, despite having endured the same ordeals as her companions. "The exercise equipment in that chamber was fascinating," she said cheerfully. "Those adjustable gravity generators allowed me to practice combat movements under different planetary conditions. Thank you for providing such excellent training facilities." The sub-commander stared at the four humans who stood before her, showing no signs of distress or trauma. Every other species that had undergone the trials came out either broken in spirit or dead from the physical challenges. These creatures seemed to have treated the entire experience as some kind of educational vacation. "The final trial is psychological," she announced with growing desperation. "You will be subjected to our most advanced mental conditioning techniques designed to identify weaknesses in your personality structure and break down your resistance to authority." The psychological examination chamber was filled with sophisticated, scanning equipment that could read brainwave patterns and emotional responses. Holographic projectors created realistic simulations of each subject's worst fears, while chemical dispensers released pheromones designed to trigger anxiety and submission responses. The Vorthak technicians had never encountered minds like those of the humans. Dr. Hana Cho's brain patterns showed intense curiosity about everything around her, even when confronted with images of her own death. Engineer Jiwan Lee's thought processes remained focused on solving technical problems even while experiencing simulated torture. Captain Minho demonstrated remarkable emotional stability while analyzing the psychological techniques being used against him. Lieutenant Yuna Kim's results were the most disturbing of all. When presented with scenarios designed to break her spirit, she responded with what could only be described as professional interest. The computer simulations showed her family and friends being killed in horrible ways, but her brain patterns indicated she was studying the attacker's methods rather than experiencing emotional trauma. "Your psychological conditioning techniques are quite advanced," she said to the technician operating the equipment. "The combination of visual stimuli and chemical triggers shows sophisticated understanding of neural pathways. Have you tested these methods on many different species?" The technician looked at his instruments in confusion. "The equipment indicates you are experiencing the stimuli properly, but your emotional responses are completely outside normal parameters. Either you are immune to fear, or you process threats in a fundamentally different way than other intelligent species." War Chief Gorthak arrived as the psychological testing was concluding. He had expected to find 4 broken humans begging for mercy and ready to acknowledge Vorthak's superiority. Instead, he found them chatting casually with the technicians about brain chemistry and discussing improvements to the testing procedures. "This is impossible," he declared angrily. "No species can survive our trials without showing proper submission. You creatures must be using some form of technological enhancement or mental conditioning." Dr. Hanacho looked up from the neural scanner she had been examining. Actually, our responses are completely natural for humans. We evolved on a planet where survival required constant adaptation to new threats and challenges. Fear and submission. Responses were selected against in favor of curiosity and problem-solving abilities. Lies, growled Gorthak. Weak creatures cannot develop such mental resilience. Only apex predators possess the strength necessary to resist psychological pressure. Captain Mino stepped forward diplomatically. Perhaps our species developed along different evolutionary paths. Humans succeeded through cooperation and persistence rather than individual dominance. We learned to treat challenges as opportunities for learning and growth. The war chief made a gesture of dismissal. You will remain here while we decide what to do with creatures who refuse to acknowledge natural law. No species has ever failed to submit to Vorthak authority. 3 days passed while the humans remained in their quarters on the station. They used the time to continue studying Vorthak technology and culture through careful observation of their guards and the facility around them. Engineer Ji-Wan Lee managed to access several technical databases through the room's computer interface. Dr. Hana Cho collected biological samples from the air filtration system. Lieutenant Yuna Kim practiced combat techniques adapted for low-gravity environments. Captain Minho was reviewing diplomatic protocols when alarms began sounding throughout the station. The lights changed from normal white to pulsing red, and automated announcements echoed through the corridors in the Vorthak language. Their guard rushed into the room looking agitated. There has been an attack on one of your human vessels, he announced. War Chief Gorthak has ordered a demonstration of Vorthak power to teach your species proper respect. The humans were escorted to an observation deck where they could see the battle taking place in space around the station. A small human supply ship was under attack by 3 Vorthak warships. The alien vessels were much larger and more heavily armed than the human ship, which was clearly trying to escape rather than fight. Your pathetic vessel will be destroyed as an example, declared Gorthak, who had joined them on the observation deck. This will demonstrate the futility of resisting Vorthak authority. Lieutenant Yuna Kim watched the battle with professional interest, but her expression was changing. The polite curiosity that had characterized all her previous interactions was being replaced by something much colder and more focused. That supply ship contains 17 crew members, said Captain Minho quietly. They are civilians carrying medical supplies and educational materials for colonist settlements. Dr. Hana Cho continued scanning the battle with her instruments, but her usual scientific enthusiasm was notably absent. The attacking vessels are using excessive force for a ship that size. The human vessel's shields are failing. Engineer Ji-Wan Lee studied the tactical displays with growing anger. Those are mining laser arrays being used as weapons. The power levels are sufficient to cause complete hull breach and explosive decompression. As they watched, one of the Vorthak warships scored a direct hit on the supply ship's engine section. The small human vessel began spinning out of control with atmosphere and debris streaming from multiple hull breaches. War Chief Gorthak smiled with satisfaction. Soon your species will understand that resistance to the Vorthak Empire is futile. When word of this destruction reaches your other ships, they will approach us with proper humility. Lieutenant Yuna Kim turned away from the observation window and looked directly at the war chief. Her earlier politeness had completely disappeared and been replaced by something that made even the massive alien take an unconscious step backward. War. Chief Gorthak, she said in a voice that was perfectly calm and absolutely terrifying. I need to inform you that you have just made a very serious mistake. The change in the humans was immediately obvious to every Vorthak on the observation deck. The curious scientists and polite diplomats were gone, and in their place stood something that radiated quiet competence and deadly purpose. Captain Minho activated his communication device. This is Captain Minho Park to all human vessels in this system. We have a hostile contact situation. The Vorthak Empire has just attacked the supply ship Gentle Breeze with civilian casualties. All ships are authorized to respond with appropriate force. Dr. Hana Cho was no longer studying Vorthak biology with fascination. Instead, she was analyzing their defensive positions and equipment with the calculating gaze of someone identifying weaknesses in an enemy. Engineer Ji-Wan Lee had accessed the station's computer systems and was rapidly downloading technical specifications while simultaneously identifying critical infrastructure points throughout the facility. War Chief Gorthak realized that something fundamental had changed, but he could not understand what had happened. You creatures were harmless scienti. The transformation in the humans was complete and terrifying in its efficiency. War Chief Gorthak had expected to see rage or desperation in their faces after the attack on their supply ship, but instead he found something much worse. The humans displayed the cold professional competence of experienced predators who had just identified their prey. Within hours of the attack, human warships began arriving at the edge of the system. Unlike the Vorthak vessels, which were designed to look intimidating with sharp angles and threatening decorations, the human ships appeared almost utilitarian. They were sleek and efficient, looking like tools built for a specific purpose rather than symbols of power. "Your pathetic fleet means nothing," declared Gorthak while studying the tactical displays. "We have 50 warships stationed at this facility, and each one is superior to anything your species can build." Captain Minho was coordinating with the incoming human fleet through his communication device. "Admiral, the Vorthak have approximately 50 combat vessels of varying sizes. They appear to be configured for individual combat rather than coordinated fleet actions. Recommend implementing Formation 7 with persistence protocols." Admiral Yoon's voice came through the communicator with crisp military precision. "Understood, Captain. All ships are moving to assigned positions. We will demonstrate proper human hunting techniques." Lieutenant Yuna Kim had been quietly studying the Vorthak station's defensive systems while listening to the communications. "Their weapons are designed for short-range, high-impact encounters," she observed. "Maximum firepower concentrated in brief engagements. Very effective for intimidation, but not optimized for extended combat operations." Dr. Hana Cho was analyzing biological data from the Vorthak crew members they had observed. Their physiology supports the tactical assessment. High muscle density and anaerobic capacity for quick, powerful movements, but limited endurance for sustained activity. They are evolutionary sprinters, not marathon runners. Engineer Jiwon Lee had gained access to most of the station's technical systems during her analysis. Their power distribution prioritizes weapons and shields over mobility and communication systems. Each ship operates independently with minimal coordination protocols. They fight like individual predators competing for territory. The first engagement began when a group of Vorthak warships moved to intercept the human fleet. The alien vessels charged forward at maximum speed with all weapons blazing in the traditional Vorthak style of overwhelming assault. Their strategy was simple and effective against most opponents: close to point-blank range and destroy the enemy. Before they could organize a proper defense, the human ships responded in a way that no previous enemy had ever attempted. Instead of meeting the charge head-on or fleeing in terror, they simply dispersed. Each human vessel moved in a different direction, at precisely calculated speeds that kept them just outside the effective range of Vorthak weapons. Cowards roared Gorthak while watching the tactical display. They flee like prey animals when faced with superior predators. Captain Minho continued coordinating the fleet movements with quiet efficiency. Persistence formation is holding steady, Admiral. Target vessels are beginning to show power fluctuations from sustained maximum acceleration. The Vorthak ships found themselves chasing shadows. Every time they closed distance on one human vessel, it would accelerate just enough to stay out of range while leading them further from the station. Other human ships would close in from different angles, forcing the Vorthak to choose between targets. "They are hurting us," realized Sub-Commander Vorthak the Sharp, who was monitoring the battle from the station. Like pack hunters separating prey animals from the herd. The realization came too late. The Vorthak ships had expended enormous amounts of energy in their initial charge and sustained pursuit. Their power systems were not designed for extended operations at maximum capacity. One by one, they began to fall behind as their fusion reactors overheated and their engines lost efficiency. The human ships moved in for the kill with coordinated precision. They did not destroy the disabled Vorthak vessels, but instead used some kind of electromagnetic weapon that shut down all electronic systems. The Vorthak crews found themselves trapped in their own ships, unable to move or communicate. "Impossible," gasped War Chief Gorthak. "How can weak creatures defeat Vorthak warriors in space combat?" Lieutenant Yuna Kim was studying the battle with professional appreciation. Your ships are individually superior to ours in terms of raw firepower, she explained. But humans learn to hunt in coordinated groups. We do not fight for individual glory or territorial dominance. We work together to exhaust and disable our prey. Dr. Hanacho had been monitoring the biological effects of the battle on the Vorthak crew members. The stress indicators are showing interesting patterns. Your species responds to unexpected situations with increased aggression rather than adaptive problem-solving. This makes you predictable in tactical situations. Engineer Jiwon Lee was accessing the disabled Vorthak ships through their compromised computer systems. Their technical specifications are quite impressive, but they lack integrated communication protocols for fleet coordination. Each captain was making independent decisions without sharing information with the others. More human ships continued to arrive throughout the battle. Unlike the Vorthak, who sent their vessels forward individually for glorious combat, the humans moved in carefully coordinated formations. Each ship had a specific role in the larger tactical plan, and no vessel operated without support from the others. Captain Minho was receiving reports from disabled Vorthak vessels throughout the system. Admiral, all enemy ships have been neutralized with minimal casualties on either side. Medical teams are standing by to provide assistance to Vorthak crew members suffering from life support failures. War Chief Gorthak stared at the tactical display in complete disbelief. His entire fleet had been systematically disabled by creatures he had considered harmless prey animals. Even worse, the humans were now offering medical assistance to their defeated enemies instead of destroying them outright. This violates all natural law, he declared desperately. Strong predators defeat weak prey. This is the foundation of evolutionary development and galactic civilization. Dr. Hanacho looked up from her biological scanner with something that might have been sympathy. Actually, War Chief, your understanding of evolution is somewhat limited. Cooperation and intelligence often provide better survival advantages than individual strength. Humans succeeded on our home world because we learned to work together and adapt to new challenges. Lieutenant Yuna Kim was coordinating with human boarding parties that were securing the disabled Vorthak vessels. Boarding teams report all enemy crew members are in stable condition. No hostile resistance encountered. Recommend standard prisoner processing protocols. You do not kill defeated enemies, asked Sub-Commander Vorthak the Sharp with genuine confusion. How do you prevent them from challenging you again in the future? Captain Minho considered the question seriously. We prefer to understand our opponents and find ways to coexist peacefully. Destroying other intelligent species wastes valuable resources and eliminates potential sources of knowledge and cooperation. Engineer Jiwon Lee had completed her analysis of captured Vorthak technology. Their engineering techniques could be quite valuable if integrated with human manufacturing processes. The metallurgy is particularly advanced and could improve our ship construction significantly. The battle was over, but War Chief Gorthak refused to acknowledge defeat. This is temporary setback, he insisted. The Vorthak Empire controls hundreds of star systems and commands thousands of warships. You have only defeated one small patrol fleet. Admiral Yoon's face appeared on the communication screen, looking calm and professional. Actually, War Chief, we have been monitoring Vorthak fleet movements throughout this region of space. Your empire appears to be significantly smaller than you claimed, and your ships operate with minimal coordination between different systems. The Admiral continued her briefing with matter-of-fact precision. Human intelligence services have identified 47 Vorthak-controlled systems with approximately 800 combat vessels total. However, these ships are distributed across a large area and rarely operate in coordinated groups larger than 20 vessels. War Chief Gorthak felt his worldview crumbling as the human admiral continued her analysis. Your species expanded through intimidation and individual combat prowess, but you never developed the organizational structures necessary for large-scale military operations. Each Vorthak commander operates independently, without strategic coordination. Dr. Hana Cho was studying the psychological effects of defeat on the Vorthak leadership. The stress responses are quite severe, she observed. Their entire cultural identity is based on individual dominance and superiority over other species. Being systematically defeated by creatures they considered inferior creates significant cognitive dissonance. Lieutenant Yuna Kim approached War, Chief Gorthak, with the same polite curiosity she had shown during their first meeting. "We would still like to learn about your culture and technology," she said sincerely. "Perhai." War Chief Gorthak sat alone in what had once been his private command chamber, but was now effectively a prison cell aboard his own station. The Vorthak Empire's most feared leader had been reduced to a defeated captive in the span of a few hours. His entire fleet was disabled, his authority was broken, and his understanding of the universe had been shattered. The door opened, and Lieutenant Yuna Kim entered carrying a tray with what appeared to be food and drink. She moved with the same calm, confidence she had displayed throughout their encounters, but now Gorthak understood that her politeness masked the competence of a highly trained predator. "I brought you some refreshments," she said while setting the tray on the oversized table. "Dr. Hanacho analyzed your biological requirements and prepared something that should be compatible with your dietary needs." Gorthak stared at her with confusion and growing frustration. "Why do you not kill me and claim your victory?" he demanded. "I am your defeated enemy, and you have proven your superiority in combat. This is when predators eliminate rivals and establish dominance." Yuna sat down across from him and poured herself a cup of tea from a container she had brought. "We do not need to eliminate you to establish anything," she replied calmly. "Humans measure success by our ability to solve problems and create beneficial outcomes for everyone involved." "This makes no sense," growled Gorthak. "Strong creatures defeat weak creatures and take their resources. This is the foundation of natural law and evolutionary progress." Dr. Hanacho entered the chamber carrying her medical scanner and a portable laboratory kit. "Actually, War Chief, that is a significant oversimplification of evolutionary processes," she said while beginning to set up her equipment. "Competition is only one factor in species development. Cooperation, intelligence, and adaptation are often much more important for long-term survival." She activated her scanner and began taking readings of Gorthak's biological responses. "Your species evolved as apex predators on a world where individual combat skills determined survival outcomes. This created a very specific set of behavioral patterns and cultural values." Captain Minho and Engineer Jiwon Lee joined them in the chamber. Minho carried diplomatic documents while Jiwon had brought technical specifications and computer tablets displaying various datasets. "We have completed our analysis of the Vorthak Empire," announced Captain Minho, while activating a holographic display. "Your territory includes 47 star systems with a total population of approximately 12 billion individuals. However, your governmental structure is highly decentralized with minimal coordination between different regions." The holographic map showed the scattered Vorthak systems connected by infrequent trade routes and communication networks. Each system appeared to operate independently, with local war chiefs maintaining authority through personal combat prowess, rather than administrative efficiency. Engineer Jiwon Lee added her technical assessment. "Your industrial capacity is impressive but inefficient, due to lack of standardization and cooperation between manufacturing centers. Each system produces equipment according to local preferences rather than optimized designs." War Chief Gorthak studied the data with growing understanding of how completely the humans had analyzed his civilization. "You know more about the Empire than most Vorthak leaders," he admitted reluctantly. "How did you gather such detailed information so quickly?" "Humans are very good at processing and analyzing large amounts of data," explained Dr. Hanacho. "We also excel at pattern recognition and strategic thinking. These abilities evolved as survival tools for persistence hunters who needed to track prey across vast distances and coordinate complex group activities." Lieutenant Yuna Kim leaned forward with genuine interest. "We would like to understand why your species chose expansion through conquest rather than cooperation. Most intelligent civilizations discover that mutual benefit agreements produce better long-term results than dominance relationships." Gorthak considered the question while examining the human analysis of his empire. "The Vorthak have always been solitary hunters," he said slowly. We compete for resources and territory through individual strength. The strongest warriors become leaders, and the weak serve or die. But this approach has significant limitations, observed Captain Minho. Individual competition prevents the large-scale coordination necessary for advanced technological development and efficient resource management. Engineer Jiwan Lee displayed technical comparisons between Vorthak and human manufacturing capabilities. Your metallurgy and weapons technology are quite advanced, but your spaceflight and communication systems lag behind human standards. This suggests your research priorities focus on individual combat rather than collective infrastructure. Dr. Hana Cho had been studying Gorthak's brain activity patterns during their conversation. The neural pathways associated with cooperation and long-term planning show limited development compared to those connected to aggressive responses and territorial behavior. This is consistent with evolutionary pressure toward individual rather than group survival strategies. So you consider us primitive, said Gorthak with growing anger. Inferior creatures who lack proper development. Lieutenant Yuna Kim shook her head emphatically. Not primitive at all. Your species has achieved remarkable success within your particular evolutionary framework. The problem is that individual excellence has limits when facing opponents who have learned to coordinate their efforts effectively. She activated another display showing comparative military capabilities. Any individual Vorthak warrior is superior to any human in terms of physical strength, speed, and natural weapons. Your ships are more heavily armored and carry more powerful weapons than ours. But humans learn to hunt in coordinated groups that can defeat much stronger individual opponents. Captain Minho spread diplomatic documents across the table. We would like to propose an alternative to continued conflict, he said formally. The human government is prepared to offer the Vorthak Empire a mutual cooperation agreement with significant benefits for both species. War Chief Gorthak examined the documents with suspicion. What do you creatures gain from such an arrangement? Why offer cooperation to defeated enemies? Dr. Hana Cho looked up from her biological analysis. Humans benefit from diversity and different perspectives. Your species has developed technologies and capabilities that could be very valuable when integrated with human systems. We also prefer to have allies rather than enemies whenever possible. Engineer Jiwan Lee displayed technical collaboration proposals. Vorthak metallurgy and materials science combined with human manufacturing and design optimization could produce significant advances for both civilizations. Your individual combat expertise could also enhance human security capabilities. We want to learn from us, said Gorthak with growing amazement. Even though you have proven superior in battle, you still value what the Vorthak have achieved. Lieutenant Yuna Kim smiled with genuine warmth for the first time since the battle began. Every intelligent species has unique strengths and knowledge. Humans succeeded by learning from others and adapting useful techniques to our own needs. We see no reason to stop learning just because we have achieved certain military advantages. Captain Minho outlined the specific terms of the proposed cooperation agreement. Vorthak systems would maintain their autonomy and cultural traditions while participating in joint research projects and coordinated defense initiatives. Human technology and organizational methods would be shared in exchange for Vorthak expertise in materials science and individual combat techniques. Dr. Hana Cho added medical and biological benefits to the proposal. Human medical technology could significantly extend Vorthak lifespans and improve quality of life. Our agricultural techniques could increase food production efficiency in your systems. Engineer Jiwan Lee described infrastructure improvements that could connect isolated Vorthak systems and improve communication and transportation capabilities throughout the Empire. War Chief Gorthak sat in silence for several minutes while processing the human proposal. His entire worldview had been built on the principle that strong predators dominated weak prey through force. The idea of voluntary cooperation between equals was completely foreign to his understanding of natural law. This cooperation you describe, he said slowly. It would require Vorthak warriors to accept humans as equals rather than conquered subjects. Actually, it would require much more than that, said Lieutenant Yuna Kim. It would require both species to recognize that we each have unique strengths and that working together produces better results than working alone. She leaned back in her chair and studied the massive alien across from her. The same curiosity that brought us here peacefully is what allowed us to adapt quickly when you attacked our people. Humans are very good at learning new things and changing our approach when circumstances require it. War Chief Gorthak looked around at the 4 humans who had systematically destroyed his understanding of galactic civilization while offering friendship and cooperation to his defeated people. For the first time in his life, he was faced with creatures who were clearly superior in crucial capabilities, but showed no interest in dominating or humiliating their defeated enemies.